Welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, it's an extremely busy night we're going to have here for you. Just as usual, all our nights are actually busy nights. Well, there are a couple of things that are that actually taken place or took place this past week. One of them is the health bill passed, I guess, the House of Representatives, and it became law when the president signed it. Now, of course, not everyone is happy about it. And, this here actually is the vote, not from this time, but this is on the health care bill that was introduced back in November 2009. And, but the reason I couldn't get a shot of the votes that took place just a couple of days ago, but they are they're similar. Right now, the votes that actually passed the health care bill were 219 to 212. So this is very much the scene on almost every vote in Congress when it deals with any domestic issues. You know, we saw similar to that vote when Congress voted on the recovery deal, the stimulus packages. We've seen the same thing. We've seen this over and over on almost everything that has to do with domestic issues. We've seen this very much on even things that are important to the American people, the American taxpayer, the American voter, that actually put these people in Congress. And but Benjamin Netanyahu was in Washington a couple of days ago. I don't know if he still is, but he did meet. Now, he did come to speak at the AIPAC conference, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee conference that is taking place in Washington as we speak. And this is an annual conference that normally AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, holds every year. And every year you get congressmen, senators, and just anyone who wants to be in government, anyone who wants to be, nominated or appointed in any political position in the United States, they will visit. Now, some of them get to speak, some of them don't get to speak, but they do get to talk to and speak to people who have power. Who have power to actually make things go in government. Now, Nancy Pelosi, when she met with Benjamin Netanyahu, and we do have a couple of pictures, when they met a couple of days ago, she said one thing. She said Congress speaks with one voice when it comes to Israel. And she is right, because Congress does speak with one voice when it comes to Israel. Now, why do they speak on important issues, on issues that are so important for the American public? Normally they are split, and they are normally split by or through party lines. But yet, when it comes to Israel, Nancy Pelosi says that Congress speaks with one voice. Why is that? Now, Congress is supposed to reflect the attitude and the thoughts and the ambitions and the desires of their constituents. Now, are you going to tell me that everybody in the United States speaks with one voice when it comes to Israel? Of course not. Now, I agree. Due to media, due to power that the Jewish lobby exerts on our politicians, due to power that Jewish elements influence our media. Therefore, you expect support for Israel to be somehow higher than support for the Palestinians due to these factors. Because the Palestinian side is not out there on CNN and Fox, and you're not seeing the Palestinian side, but yet you are seeing the Israeli side. So you would say public opinion in the United States is changing, though, and it's changing fast, and it's changing to support the Palestinians. Now, but to have Congress speak with one voice, as Nancy Pelosi said, that is very dangerous. That is extremely dangerous. When you actually look at things the way they are, you will see that the Israelis are doing almost everything in their power to hurt America and hurt Americans. Now, on the other hand, you have the Palestinians and the Arabs who are mainly consumers for American services, and also they have products that America wants. So you would think that America should play even-handed when it comes to the Palestinian-Israeli problem. But it's not. And it's not because it is not in the interest of the United States that America play even-handed, or America should look over its own interest, not the Israeli interest. But yet, we see people in Congress racing with each other to please Israel and please AIPAC. Why is that? Well, very simple. Because AIPAC controls those people in Washington. AIPAC, through their funding, controls our politicians, controls our candidates for whatever political position that might be, including, by the way, even local races, even on the state level, because they know that these people on the state level, and even on city councils level, one day they will become congressmen and senators. So they go all the way down the chain, all the way down the line, and they start prepping these people to become senators and become congressmen. And the only thing they tell them, look, and we've heard this on this program from senators and from congressmen, they will tell them, look, AIPAC representatives, they will visit you as a congressman in your offices, and they are flooding Capitol Hill as we speak with their people who are coming from different states. There are about 7,000 people who are attending, 7,000 Jewish people who are attending the American Israel Public Affairs Committee conference in Washington, and all these people are flooding the Capitol and our congressional offices right now as we speak. Now, the only thing that AIPAC would ask you as a senator, and they will tell you, we don't care how you are going to vote on domestic issues. And we see that. We see that from the votes that we are showing here. We see that it's split along party lines. But when it comes to Israel, you will find like 98 senators voting for Israel, and like maybe 2 voting for, maybe abstaining or saying no. When it comes to Congress, they have the vast majority of those people. You know, we're going to play a clip, and it will show you what is the AIPAC conference is and how important it is for our politicians. Let's go ahead and play AIPAC 1 and then follow it with AIPAC 2.
More than half the United States House of Representatives are here this evening. Tomorrow we will have over 400 appointments. From New York, Gary Ackerman. Alabama, Robert Alderman.
Over 400 congressmen attended This is out of the 2007 AIPAC conference. They are naming the congressmen and women who attended.
You should be ashamed of the people you kill every day.
Get them out. Go to your own country.
I was there. No, you don't even know anything.
I think AIPAC is supporting Netanyahu.
Going in the
Netanyahu
building.
wants the U.S. to draw the U.S. into another war.
They are going to attend this year. This is just a couple of days ago.
1,400 killed in Gaza.
Sure, I've got a couple
Going to attend
since
the
1947. It's
conference.
really an unfathomable situation today. Can we really talk about a viable two-state solution with this kind of balkanization and disappearance of Palestinian lands?
Murder is not a Jewish value. Shame on you.
Would you like to be stopped by a checkpoint this morning? Tell Netanyahu, peace not settlement.
Are you ashamed of yourself? What do you think has happened to
You give up Jerusalem, lady.
1,400 people dead.
That's what Israel is. They'll get there someday. They'll wind up in the freaking Hague, where they should have been from day one. For the brutal, uncalled for, illegal murder of Arab people everywhere. Shame. Shame. And don't tell me I don't know what it feels like. Do you know what it feels like to be an Arab living behind your apartheid wall?
Listen, this is ours. This is ours now. The sooner you get used to it, the better off you'll be.
Why can the
Stop.
go, but I can't?
You cannot pass. Do you not read? You cannot read even. Go away. This is all ours. Everything is ours
My
now.
house is on the other
Stop.
side.
Dude, you can go and get the papers. If you went and got the papers, you'd be okay. Go find the papers. You don't have paperwork, you cannot pass.
Please.
See the checkpoint. It's checkpoint. Go back.
But my
Go back.
children are
You
there.
must
My
go
children
now.
are there.
No.
My children.
You think sanctions will be a big topic of discussion?
Oh, I'm sure it will, but it's a waste of time. There's no way that sanctions are going to work. It's too much money involved.
End the apartheid.
There's no way sanctions.
Free Palestine.
Shame on you. Jews stand for justice, not genocide. You're bad Jews, all of you.
Oh, more money, more settlements, more U.S. support for Israel. And I came here from California to express my opposition to U.S.-Israeli domination of the Palestinians. I've been there 5 times. Palestinians taught me how to be a human being. They taught me what it's like to be a human being and how to take care of other human beings. And I will always be repaying my debt to the Palestinian people. It's their land, and they will never, ever stop struggling for freedom. And this organization is committed to opposing their freedom and to destroying them as a people. And that's the definition of genocide. And that's what the Israelis are doing. And that's how the Americans are supporting this Israeli effort. That's why I'm here today.
The policies of AIPAC and the Israeli government are promoting
Do you promote peace and love and kindness, real Jewish values, or do you promote hatred and murder, which is what Israel is doing? Israel is killing innocent people. That's not a Jewish value. Reflect on real Jewish values. What? You're not.
Oh my God, children are going in to learn from murderers? You're taking your children in?
Promote real peace. Good morning to reflect real Jewish values, which are not murder.
Yeah, the Israelis are engaged in a public relations campaign to hide and cover up what they do. And all you have to do is go there to see what they do, and they do it every day. It's obvious if you're there watching what takes place. Extremely violent, extremely brutal, destroy Palestinian homes, kill Palestinian children, imprison Palestinian resistance leaders. And if you try nonviolent struggle, they're particularly brutal against you. They just turned Bil'in into a closed military zone, a place where Palestinians are engaged in nonviolent struggle.
You know, Hillary Clinton spoke at the conference, as did Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, who also had a meeting with President Obama, and that meeting was not, there was no photo ops, there were basically not much, they did not let the media in, and therefore, but there was a reason for that. There was a reason for that. Because Netanyahu now, he is flying high on seventh heaven. And with the strength of AIPAC, Obama could not afford to actually face this man, because this man is much stronger than Obama. This man, Benjamin Netanyahu, maybe you forget, but we don't. Back in 1998, when he came out and joined Paul Wolfowitz, the designer and the architect of the war on Iraq for Israel, using United States power and blood and money. When Benjamin Netanyahu joined Paul Wolfowitz back in 1998 in a pro-Israel demonstration across the street from the White House, when President Clinton was holding on to his positions of no settlements, no building settlements in Palestinian areas, when President Clinton was holding on, saying no to the clean break that Israel's policy wanted to do, what Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to do. That same day, ladies and gentlemen, that same day, Monica Lewinsky's story broke out. Now, we see Benjamin Netanyahu coming again to Washington in the same day when the AIPAC conference is on. That's the power and the reason they did not want, and by the way, the meeting, there was not much said. There was not much agreed upon in the meeting, because Obama could not risk, not during AIPAC conference. There's so much pressure on Obama from his own party not to make this man, Benjamin Netanyahu, mad. Because if he is, then AIPAC is mad. And if AIPAC is mad, Democrats will not, comes November, Democrats will be, well, let me use a word that may not sit good with many people out there. They'll be slaughtered. That's what will happen. So Obama said, okay, I'll meet with this guy. By the way, this picture, is not from this time, because this time there were no pictures. They did not want any pictures. There were no statements, because Barack Obama did not want any statements coming out saying that I could not tell this man anything. I could not stop this man. This man, Benjamin Netanyahu, when he spoke at the conference before meeting Obama, he said that they will continue building in East Jerusalem. He said because they built Jerusalem 3,000 years ago, and they will continue building in East Jerusalem. These apartment buildings, ladies and gentlemen, are built by the Israeli government, paid for by United States taxpayers, on Palestinian land in East Jerusalem. On Palestinian land in East Jerusalem. And this is the problem between the United States and Israel. Now, of course, to me, the problem is more of a scenario played to very much show that the United States is really upset with Israel. But at the same time, Benjamin Netanyahu very much is the boss. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Israel was established back in 1948 by a United Nations decision to partition Palestine between Arabs, which is Muslims and Christians, and Jews. Okay? But Israel back in 1967 ended up actually controlling all of Palestine. And as the Geneva Convention, the fifth Geneva Convention, or the fourth Geneva Convention of 1948, and the Hague Regulations of 1907 forbid occupying powers from altering the life ways of civilians who are occupied. Which means you cannot, as an occupying power, you cannot bring your people into the occupied land. You cannot move people out of their homes and install your own people there. It's against international law. Now, Israel broke international law many, many times. It broke our own laws many, many times. Israel spied on us many, many times. This AIPAC, the same AIPAC, actually, the people running AIPAC were charged with treason. They were charged with espionage on behalf of Israel. AIPAC, ladies and gentlemen, started a long time ago. But before AIPAC, we had the American Zionist Council. The American Zionist Council, it started by the Israeli Information Office in New York, which is an arm of the Israeli government, of the Ministry of Information. They had an office in New York, paid for by the State of Israel. The employees are Israeli government employees. This was in the 60s and the 50s. They were so influential that President Kennedy and his brother Robert decided that the American Zionist Council should register as a foreign agent because it was doing the business as a government agency for the State of Israel at that time. Because it was buying our candidates. It was buying our Congress. It was buying many people in government. It was that influential back then. Now, the Foreign Registry Act, which was enacted by Congress back in 1936, the main reason for it It was basically to stop German lobbying in the United States and to stop foreign agents and foreign government from influencing decisions by our own politicians and our own policymakers. So Kennedy wanted to stop that. He knew exactly how influential those people were. His brother Robert knew how influential those people were, and they wanted to actually stop the American Zionist Council. They filed Robert Kennedy, this man that you're looking at right now, his Department of Justice, because he was, when his brother was the President of the United States, Robert Kennedy was the over Department of Justice. They wanted the American Zionist Council to actually register as a foreign agency because they felt that Israel was even controlling the United States way back then. Unfortunately for us, ladies and gentlemen, and unfortunately for the world, and unfortunately for our future, those two people were assassinated, John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, were assassinated before they were able to make the American Zionist Council register as a foreign agent. But they had came along so far into that registry process that the American Zionist Council found no other way but to actually go away and basically stop working as the American Zionist Council and established another organization by the same people who were running the American Zionist Council, by the same founder who founded the American Zionist Council. They just put the American Zionist Council on the shelf, not use it, and they established another organization called the American Public Affairs Committee. We know it today as AIPAC. That's the same people. Now, since then, ladies and gentlemen, many people have asked that AIPAC should be registered as a foreign agent because the American people should know who's influencing their congressmen and women and why. The American people deserve to know why. Why Congress would vote with one voice when it comes to Israel, but split exactly in half when it's not. American people deserve to know why their taxpayers' money are actually going to kill Palestinians. They deserve to know. They deserve to know why their hard-earned taxpayers' money is building settlements on a land stolen by the Israelis from the Palestinians. The American people deserve to know who's running the government. Why can't our politicians stop AIPAC and AIPAC's influence? Why can't our politicians stand up to AIPAC and its influence? Now, its influence does not only go to Capitol Hill, Washington. It also goes all the way through down the channels to the media, through other organizations. So, after the assassination of President Kennedy, which he was determined and adamant to put a stop to the Israeli influence in our politics, he could not. He lost his life. His brother Robert, if he would have made it, and by the way, the jury's still out on who assassinated both of these people. It's still out. Now, we did many programs on that, and we proved to you that it was not the people who were accused of killing these people that actually killed them. So those two brothers died fighting for America, fighting the Israeli influence in America. Incidentally, last week, a group in Washington filed with the Department of Justice over 300 documents, close to 400 documents, stating that the Department of Justice, and they asked the Department of Justice to register AIPAC as a foreign agent, because we should know how much it's costing Israel, the billions of dollars that we send them, the protection that we give them all over the world. We need to know how much it's costing, and it's costing very much few $1 million, just $1 million that they spend on our politicians to force them. Now, it's not that they buy the votes. Well, before they even put you in Congress, they're going to tell you, we don't care how you vote on domestic issues. That's your business. But when it comes to Israel, we expect you to vote for Israel. And all you have to do is go back throughout the congressional acts and find out what these acts were and how did our congressmen and women voted. How did they vote? Let's go ahead and play the third clip, which is Democracy Now! Speaking with Dr. Finkelstein, who is, by the way, he's Jewish professor, and also his mother and his father, they were both in Nazi concentration camps. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
Well, healthcare is not the only issue on President Obama's agenda today. He's also scheduled to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Last night, Netanyahu delivered a defiant speech before an AIPAC conference. That's the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee. Netanyahu vowed to continue expanding settlements in occupied East Jerusalem despite criticism from the Obama White House.
Ladies and gentlemen, the connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel cannot be denied. The connection between the Jewish people and Jerusalem cannot be denied. The Jewish people were building Jerusalem 3,000 years ago, and the Jewish people are building Jerusalem today. Jerusalem is not a settlement, it's our capital.
Hours before Netanyahu spoke at the AIPAC conference, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton told AIPAC attendees that the U.S. commitment to Israel's security and Israel's future is rock solid. But Clinton did criticize Israel for continuing to build settlements in occupied East Jerusalem.
New construction in East Jerusalem or the West Bank undermines that mutual trust and endangers the proximity talks that are the first step toward the full negotiations that both sides say they want and need. And it exposes daylight between Israel and the United States that others in the region hope to exploit. It undermines America's unique ability to play a role, an essential role, in the peace process. Our credibility in this process depends in part on our willingness to praise both sides when they're courageous and when we don't agree to say so, and say so unequivocally.
We're joined now here in studio by scholar and writer Norman Finkelstein. He's author of a number of books on the Israel-Palestine conflict. His latest is being released this week. It's called This Time We Went Too Far: Truth and Consequences of the Gaza Invasion. Norman Finkelstein is also the subject of a new documentary called American Radical: The Trials of Norman Finkelstein. Norman, welcome to Democracy Now! First, respond to what both Secretary of State Clinton and the Israeli Prime Minister said. Secretary of State Clinton actually criticizing Israel. Did that surprise you?
It didn't really surprise me. I think one has to look at the framework of the criticism. There is an international law ruling or opinion on the question of East Jerusalem. In July 2004, the highest judicial body in the world, the International Court of Justice, it rendered what it called its advisory opinion. And it stated unequivocally that East Jerusalem is, and now I'm using its words, occupied Palestinian territory. There's not a question here of conflicting claims to Jerusalem, let alone an Israeli exclusive right to East Jerusalem. The law is clear. It's occupied Palestinian territory because it was acquired in the course of a war, in the course of the June 1967 war. And under international law, it's inadmissible to acquire territory by war. I would want to add that that's the position of all human rights organizations, and it was the position of the Goldstone Report. The Goldstone Report repeatedly refers to East Jerusalem as occupied Palestinian territory. And Mr. Goldstone, by his own reckoning, is a Zionist, a lover of Israel, but he also respects the law, and the law is clear.
Okay. Well, he said that Jerusalem, that they were building Jerusalem 3,000 years ago. Now, that's a lie. That is a lie. And when he said that Jews are connected to Jerusalem, I agree. There were many people connected to Jerusalem throughout history. There were many people connected to many pieces of land throughout history. The Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Romans, the Canaanites. Many people have went through Jerusalem. And the least of it is the Jewish control of that city. The least. Now, there is no archaeological evidence to prove that there were anything Jewish, any palaces. You know, we talk about the period of David and Solomon. Now, we're not really sure of when exactly Judaism became centered as a religion. Okay? We're not sure. And history does not tell us. But the city of Jerusalem, ladies and gentlemen, it's an ancient city, actually. It was built for the god Shalem. It does not mean the city of peace, but it means the built-up place of Shalem. Way before Judaism. Way before the Jews even went there. And remember, when the Jews went there from Egypt, Palestine was inhabited. The Bible tells you who the people were in Palestine. It tells you who they were. It tells you Genesis has about 13 different people living there. The least of them is the Jews. There are no evidence, none whatsoever, that in East Jerusalem there were any palaces for Solomon or David. We don't even know where they were. That's how bad it is. Israel has been in control of that land for 60 years and the West Bank for over 40 years, since 1967, 43 years ago. They have not found not even single evidence that they have anything in East Jerusalem. But yet, because he said 3,000 years ago they were there, then they come back in the 21st century and wanted to claim something that is installed in mythology? Not even history. Mythology. Mythology. And so you okay with killing people just because some other people are so crazy and thinking that they were there 3,000 years ago. And they were not. They were not in Jerusalem 3,000 years ago. They were not building Jerusalem 3,000 years ago. But he comes over here and lies because he has the protection of AIPAC. That's why. It is time, and America is changing. Because the truth, you can hide the truth for so long, but the truth has a life of its own. The truth will always try to come out. No matter how much they try to bury that truth, but the truth will come out. And America is changing. America is changing for the better because people are asking questions. What is this? Even General Petraeus, said that we need to be careful about this Palestinian-Israeli issue. If Israel continues and allowed to continue on this course, it's going to be extremely dangerous for the United States. If they do something, we talked to you about that mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque last week. If Israel does something, and this is what worries Obama and Clinton and the administration, but it does not worry our Congress because they care less about America's blood. They care less about America's interest. They have these people in Congress are Israeli firsters, even if it's on the account of the American people and on the account of America itself. When Pelosi says that Congress speaks with one word when it comes to Israel, when Israel is doing things to harm the United States. The United States has been supporting Israel for a long time, not because the United States wants to support Israel, but because the United States is being coerced to support Israel with... All right, we forgot the phone. Because Israel is coercing the United States to actually pay for all this and fight its wars. General Petraeus is worried. He's worried about the troops we have in Iraq. He's worried about the troops we have in Afghanistan. He's worried about every American that is present in the Arab world and the Middle East, that is present in any Muslim country. Because Israel does not care about any of this. It doesn't matter if all of America is gone, but Israel gets what it wants, and that's exactly what Israel is doing. Now, if the United States government cannot stand up and protect the country, they need to come back to the people, because the people has the biggest power. If our politicians cannot stand up to Israel, they need to fall back on us, the citizens of the United States. They need to come clean and tell us exactly how Israel controls them. They need to come out and come clean and say, we are, as a United States government, we are as occupied as the Palestinian people are by these same people. It's just in the case of the Palestinians, it's military occupations. In the case of the United States, it's political occupations. And it must stop. Now, if these people that we have in Washington to protect and to serve us, if they can't, they need to tell us. And they can't. Because AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, got most of them controlled. The media that you get into your homes, it's controlling you. Hollywood that you are watching in your movie theaters, it's destroying you. Destroying your morals. Destroying who you are. Destroying your values. But yet, we have our politicians will say that we stand with Israel, we share the same values. BS, we don't share any of their values. We share freedom. We share justice. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. That's what our values are. Our values is not to kill children. Our values is not to kill children and steal their land and install some people from in their place, install people that we bring in from Europe, from Ethiopia, from all over the world. They are converting Indian tribes in South America into Judaism and bringing them to live in Palestine because the Jews don't want to go. Why aren't the Jews in America go? Isn't it the promised land? Why they're not going? Why most Jews, even though after 60 years of Israel establishment, why most Jews still live outside? Why? Well, America is changing. We're going to play a very quick clip, the CNN clip, just to show you how America is changing in its opinion and attitude and how CNN tries to play it down. Play CNN.
Jack Cafferty's here with the Cafferty File. Jack.
With diplomatic tensions rising, both the United States and Israel are trying to tamp down the flames. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton now insists that the two nations enjoy a close, unshakable bond. But when Israel announced it was going ahead with the building of more settlements over the objections of the United States, and when they chose to make that announcement while Vice President Joe Biden was visiting their country, Mrs. Clinton called Israel's actions insulting to the United States. And they clearly were. In a game of cover your whatever, the Israeli ambassador to the United States now denies making statements that relations between the two countries are in a crisis. But whatever state relations are in, it ain't good. Some are suggesting it's time for the United States to get tougher with Israel. One Middle East expert wonders if the flare-up between the two countries means the Obama administration might be seeking regime change in Israel. Want to really get tough and send a message? Start cutting back on the approximately $2.5 billion in aid that we give Israel every year. In today's New York Times, columnist Maureen Dowd quotes one Obama official as saying, "That's not how you treat your best friend," when describing Israel's recent construction announcement of 1,600 more homes in the disputed East Jerusalem. In her piece called "Bibi's Tense Time Out," a reference to Bibi Netanyahu, Dowd writes the White House is, quote, appalled at Israel's self-absorption and its failure to notice that America is not only protecting Israel from Iran, fighting wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but also dealing with a miasma of horrible problems at home, unquote. So here's the question. Is it time for the United States to get tougher with Israel? Go to cnn.com/Cafferty File and post a comment on my blog.
Jack is back with the Cafferty File. Jack.
Question this hour, is it time for the United States to get tougher with Israel? Dana writes from Oregon, yes, Israel has insulted us and further inflamed the Palestinians. I don't understand what the Israelis hope to prove by any of this. Greg in Minneapolis writes, Israel needed our help to be able to stand on their own 2 feet when the country was first founded in 1948. But that time is long past, and they should either do as they're told if they're going to continue to receive foreign welfare from the United States, or forego those funds and support themselves. Steve in Virginia says it's time for the U.S. to live up to the assumed role as an honest broker in the Middle East. Trust and equity must be two components of that role, and both must be applied and enforced equally to Israel. If we support Israel, we support Israel. It's not the other way around. Israel has to demonstrate that it wants peace for themselves as much as we want it for them. Mark in Oklahoma City, we ought to be helping Israel occupy as much Arab land as possible. Last time I checked, we weren't fighting Jews in the war on terror, we're fighting Muslims. As far as I'm concerned, they can occupy the entire Middle East. Michael in Florida says maybe someone, anyone, can tell me why we continue to give Israel $2.5 billion a year. They don't have any oil. They won't let us put a huge military base in their country. What strategic value does supporting Israel have for U.S. interests? If the U.S. wants to get tough with Israel, we need to end all aid to that country and insist that they allow the formation of a Palestinian homeland. Lou says it would seem like this country would have some kind of leverage against Israel with the billions of dollars we give to it every year in foreign aid. And Carl writes, this should have been done many years ago. If you want to read more on the subject, go to my blog, cnn.com/Cafferty File.
You got a lot of email on this one, Jack?
Yeah, quite a bit, Wolf.
And most of it was anti-Israel, would you say?
Probably more anti than pro, yeah.
Interesting.
You know, all you have to do is go to his blog. You know, they played down, even though they showed about, what, 6 or 7 of basically anti-Israel statements, people from the United States commenting on his report, and the majority of them, you know, when he asked him, he said, you got many emails like that. He said, yeah. He asked him, most of them are anti-Israel? He said, probably more. You know what? The vast majority of them, all you got to do is go over there. America is changing. And Americans are beginning to understand. And by the way, they lied when they said $2.5 billion that Israel gets from this country. No. Israel gets over $10 billion in direct military aid, in loans that they don't pay. You see, when they call them loans, they don't consider them. But if you don't pay it, you can call it whatever you want to. So they give them $2.5, actually $3 billion, not counting the military aids, not counting the loans, $10 billion loans that forgiven. They never paid anything. They haven't even paid for destroying the USS Liberty and killing Americans. This is the country that we're supposed to be friends with. They killed Americans and we could not do anything. The United States government could not do anything. They are even keeping the story away from you. This happened back in 1967. Israel will get what Israel wants as long as AIPAC is in Washington. The Israeli government is in Washington working for Israel, but it is presenting itself as an American organization, as nothing but a lobbying arm. We're Americans lobbying. The Constitution allows it. The Constitution allows lobbying, but it does not allow lobbying for another country. The Constitution says, and our laws says, if you work for another country, you need to be registered as foreign agent. And that's what we need to push. You need to call the Department of Justice and tell them to push for this foreign agent registry. Maybe, just maybe, we might be able to liberate this country. But Americans are waking up. They're waking up to the BS of CNN. Even though they showed this, they showed 20 times that pro-Israel stuff on that same day. But they showed this because they cannot. They're going to lose. They will lose their credibility because you out there know that what Israel is doing is wrong. Imagine if everybody who thought in his mythology, not in his history, because he can't prove it, but in his mythology, that they had some place over there. Imagine if they come back 3,000 years and say, we want this. Imagine if the American Indians somehow get power. Hey. And that wasn't 3,000 years ago either. That wasn't after so many empires and so many different people and so many different, I guess, civilizations that went over there 3,000 years ago because it's in their mythology. They want to come kill the Palestinians who live there, who have been living on the land, and they can prove it since the Canaanite. Before even Jesus, before David and Solomon, before all that. Wake up. Keep the pressure on. America's doing good by waking up. I just hope that we will wake up while we still have something to salvage, because right now we don't really have much left. Anyway, tell them good night.
And see you next